And as you heard from his intro, my guest today on the Parra Cave podcast is a former professional rugby league player with 2 clubs in the NRL, playing a remarkable 120 NRL games. But when I say remarkable, it's the same number of first grade games as his dad, Mark, played as well, and debuting for the same club as well in the Parramatta Eels. But he also played for the Manly Sea Eagles and also over in England for the Catalans and Wakefield Trinity. And these days, you'll hear him on the Scope podcast on YKTR with those lads. A player who played for the club I love in the Parramatta Eels, player number 715. Welcome to the Parra Cave podcast, Justin Horo.
Thanks for having me on, Troy.
Not a problem. Now, born in 1986 in New Zealand, and growing up, I'm assuming your dad, Mark, was your hero. Was rugby league the sport that you always wanted to play and follow in his footsteps?
Yeah, mate. It's my earliest memories of him playing at Parramatta Stadium. I can remember some pretty cool stories because, as I got a little bit older, I become friends with Peter Wynn's son, Tim Wynn.
Oh yeah.
Peter Wynn was just at the end of his career, and Dad was sort of just starting his at Parramatta. So it was pretty cool that after we all sort of went our different ways at times, we ended up becoming really good mates. A little bit later down the road, but some of my earliest memories of playing, being at Parramatta Stadium, watching Dad play. Mucking around with Timmy Wynn and Renee Wynn, his sister, in the grandstand when Dad was playing. It would have been 1990. In those early years, the first couple of years.
Was there a particular team or players that you followed growing up at all?
Yeah, like you said, mate. Obviously, Dad was number one.
Yep.
But when Dad was playing first grade anyway, and my love for rugby league started, the Canberra Raiders were pretty red hot around that time.
Yep.
They were winning a couple of grand finals, and then even Dad took me. I think it would have been his last year at Parramatta. We went to the 1994 grand final to watch Canberra versus the Bulldogs, I believe it was.
Yep.
They were the apart from Dad, cheering him on every game. Canberra Raiders was sort of my team as a kid, and I loved Laurie Daly and Brad Clyde and those sorts of players.
Yeah, champion players. Now, I believe you used to play juniors for the Sinclair Comets, and also juniors at the Roosters. How did you then end up at Parramatta? How did you end up at Parramatta and then make your debut in 2010?
Yeah, so Parramatta was sort of threw me a lifeline. After coming through the grades, I wasn't, despite my dad playing NRL, it took me a little bit later to progress through the grades. I didn't make all the rep teams straight away. I didn't make my first rep team until I was 18, which was SG ball team at the Roosters. I actually trialled out for Parra back-to-back years. Harold Matts, under 16s, under 17s. Got a little bit further in the 17s, but never made the final squads. But at the age of 18, in my last year of school at Westfield Sports, I really come into my own. I sort of had a bit of a growth spurt, put on a bit of weight, ended up playing at the Sydney Roosters, and had a good couple of years there. But after the under 20 season, it sort of all got I think I sort of got a bit carried away with myself a little bit. It was a bit of an ego check, and Parra threw me a lifeline. Obviously, Dad's relationships with Parramatta helped for sure. He was coaching around that time, but it was basically just like a part-time contract. I trained with the under 20s, even though I was a reserve grader in the last form of actual proper reserve grade footy before it changed to 20s comp.
Yep.
So I was training part-time as I was working at Peter Wynn's. I touched on that. So at Peter Wynn Sports, and then going to training with Timmy Wynn. And then we would train with the Jersey Fleet team, which is the under 20s. And then we come back, and when all the first graders dropped back, we played reserve grade in the last real year of reserve grade. So I ended up finding my feet again in that year, and then sort of just kept on plugging away in the reserve grade until eventually I got my shot.
Yeah, well, that's 2010. You make your debut, and it's a bit of a sort of a coincidental sort of story, your debut, because your dad made his debut against the West Magpies, and you make your debut against the West Tigers. It's pretty coincidental. What do you remember about your debut game? Did you think first grade was what it was going to be like?
Yeah, for sure. I remember the one thing that stands out is that we gave away. Like obviously a lot of the times you come on, it's during defence, as you'll notice. In attack. But I sort of just got subbed on, on the fourth tackle. I think they were bringing Brendan Oak off, and then so I went straight into defence. As the changeover happens, you sort of get ready just to defend. And I remember, someone gave away a penalty on the fourth tackle, and I was absolutely gassed. I think, when you get out there, you've got all this energy, and I try to make. I think I made 2 or 3 tackles back to back in a row, and then someone gave away a penalty on the fourth, and I remember just going, I don't think I'm going to be able to last. I don't think I'm going to be able to hang on.
Yeah.
Luckily we did. I don't think we let him try. It was against the Tigers. They beat us. But one of the things that stood out for me from the game is I think the first person I tackled was Lottie Takiri, and obviously watching him for a long time. The one thing I took out of it was actually wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. When you watch these guys, you obviously put players on a pedestal, and when I got into contact, I was like, all right. This is a bit like reserve grade, but probably just these guys feel a little bit stronger, but I feel like I can hold my own. So those were some of the things that I remember from the debut game.
You mentioned there you're a little bit gassed. Your dad thought he saw you warm up about 4 or 5 times. He thought you were going to be buggered by the time you got on the field.
Yeah, mate. Like before at the start of your career, you warm up as much as you can. You're keen as you want to show the coaches you're ready to go. But by the end of your career, they'll tell you to go have a warm up, and you'll hold it as long as you can.
Yeah.
You don't want to. That just comes with experience. You've been out there. You know what to expect. You're just trying to save the legs. That's one thing you just don't realise as a kid. It's always good to show good energy, but trying to conserve your energy and make sure you're ready to go when you get on the field is important. So finding a good balance somewhere in the middle of that is probably the right way to warm up.
Yeah, for sure. Was it the old heads at Parramatta that took you under their wings, so to speak? Yeah, Nathan Kalis, Birdie, Hindy, when you first started?
Yeah, those boys are really good. Yeah, so I come through with some really strong leaders and some really, really good, talented players for Parramatta. Those guys, it was funny for me because Dad played NRL. I sort of wasn't. I was around the Parramatta system, and Dad was coaching and also looking after players that had played first grade. I had a handful of players in the team that I went to school with.
Yeah.
So the transition was a little bit easier for me in the sense where, and I'd been around the full-time squad for about 3 years. So by the time I actually made my debut, I felt really comfortable with all the players, but always got along with them all. Had a pretty cool, funny relationship with Hindy. Really got along with Hindy. We had Nath, who was our skipper in the first year in 2010, and then Hindy took over. Those were some tough years, 2011 and 12, but I always thought, Hindy always stayed the same, which I appreciated about, and you sort of see that in that larrikin side now that we see on TV. Another guy who was really big for me was Tamana Tahu when I come because I would come on and play on the left edge, and Tamana was our left centre at the time. And then just being from New Zealand Maori descent himself, just naturally you look to those guys. They know a little bit more about your culture and your heritage and all that sort of thing. So he always gave me a lot of confidence, Tamana, whether I played he always made me feel like I belonged there, which was Yeah. And then also the way he'd protect me defensively, he was a really good defender. So I enjoyed playing with him and him playing on the left edge with me for sure.
Yeah, he certainly was an excitement machine when he was at Parra. I used to love watching him in the centres there, and the big crossbar salute for the try. It was great.
Unreal. He was so strong and so quick, mate.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned there was a couple of difficult years there at Parra after the grand final in 2009. That 2012 season is a difficult one for you. You suffered some injuries and only played 6 games. How did you get through that mentally? How hard was that?
Yeah, that was difficult because I had actually had one of the better pre-seasons probably of my entire career. I sort of knew what to expect a year after Steve Kearney and Brad Arthur had come. He was, Brad was the assistant coach at the time. He's one guy that was, really big for me around that time about, making sure that I, prepared the best I could in the preseason, and I was in really good nick. Me and Mitchy Allgood in particular really got together and took it upon ourselves to, put our stamp on 2012. Unfortunately, like you said, had a bit of a rough beginning at the start, the back end of pre-season with some family stuff, and then straight away, once I got back playing, I ended up getting injured early. I got dropped, pretty early after round 1, and then when I went back down to reserve grade, I still had the opportunity to fight my way back up, and then I just kept on getting injured. It was a tough. I didn't get sort of back into first grade by the end of the year, but again, Brad Arthur was a big part of that. So basically, we all know that Stephen Kearney was moved on. And when that happened, Brad come to me, he sat down, he goes, "Look, I'm not going to promise you anything, but it's a clean slate with me. So rip in at reserve grade, get your form back, get healthy, and then who knows what will happen." And 2 or 3 weeks later, there was an opportunity for me to get back in the team, and then I sort of just held on to it until the end of the season.
Yeah, well, I mean, you had that, as you said, Brad took over as caretaker coach in that season. You did spend minimal time with Brad, although he was the assistant coach throughout the year. What is Brad like as a coach? Because he's still coaching at Parramatta these days.
Yeah, I love Brad. I can't speak, on my own podcast. We've talked about Brad before. I think sometimes he's been unfairly criticised. I think he's done a really good job with, where Parramatta are now. I suppose the next hump is getting over and trying to win a premiership, but it's not easy. There are really good franchise squads in Melbourne Storm and Sydney Roosters, and now Penrith are representing themselves. It's not easy to win a comp, but the one thing I will say is just, from those stories that I told you, the best thing about BA, it doesn't matter about your reputation, any outside noise or whatever. If you put in the work, he'll give you the opportunity. And I think you see that sometimes with, some of the selections that he makes. Like you look at some big names that are left out. Sometimes round 1's a perfect example of. I'm not saying those guys didn't have big pre-seasons, but he's not afraid to make a call on. If someone's doing a really good job at training, or if someone's had really good trial form, and then it makes those guys that aren't a part of the squad, all right, because no one takes anything for granted with him. So that's one thing that I always respected with him. He was our assistant coach at Manly in my first year there, and it was the same way. He treated Anthony Watmo the same way he treated me. It was the same way as he treated, Jesse Semmelofeo or Lingy Seow, guys that were playing reserve grade. So, that's the one thing that stood out with me for Brad for sure.
Does he have a fair spray on him in the sheds?
No, he was our assistant coach. He's an angry little man for sure. You can tell. The best thing about him though is he sort of lets you figure it out. That's one thing. Like if you can identify it yourself, he'll just have a conversation to you. I don't know what it's like. I've never had him as a full-time head coach as well, so it might be a little bit different. Some of the boys might tell you some more stories, but what I found with me in particular when we'd do, if I knew I fucked up sorry, I don't know if I can swear on this, but
good.
If I did something wrong at halftime or at full time, in particular in the video room, that's where I got the most out of it with him. Really detailed video, but if it was blatant and obvious for me to see, and it was a really bad stuff up for myself, he sort of would just let me come up with it myself, like sort of tell him, where I went wrong, and it makes you accountable. It keeps you accountable, because then there's no way around it. You know what I mean? Sometimes the better coaches can just let you figure it out. They give you a few pointers, and that's how he was with me anyway.
Yeah, it'd be great to see him get a premiership. He's Parramatta through and through, and wish him all the best in season 2022. Was playing in Birdie and Hindy's last game a highlight at Parramatta for you?
Yeah, it was cool, mate. So, like I said, our relationships were pretty strong even away from footy. I really got along with those two guys. They were, like I said, even Birdie had his own little quirky sense of humour that I enjoyed. With Hindy, it was more, we sat next to each other in the video room as, once I started playing a bit of first grade, and we had our own little sort of inside jokes, which I enjoyed. So I just know what they meant to the club and what they meant to the fans. So that was, you understood the moment. I've actually got, Birdie's, not Birdie's, who is it? Oh, yeah, so I kept the jersey. The last game, I ended up getting Fui's jersey from Hindy's last game. I saw with him. So, it was a pretty cool moment for me, and I got Fui and Hindy to sign that for me.
Oh, nice.
I thought that was, I sort of knew the significance of the game and what it meant. And, Fui, again, another Parramatta legend. So I thought if I get a couple of these big dogs and get them to sign it, it's one to definitely chuck up in the trophy room when I get the opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. We've got the Hindy fridge here in the Parra Cave, and all the fans were let on the field after that game, and ripped up some of the grass, and I put it on the fridge there. And my favourite memory of that game is Hindy's goal kick. That's just that's gold.
Yeah, it was an awesome moment, that.
Yeah, love it. What's Fui like? Because he was a machine at Parra, and one of my favourite players.
Yeah, Fui's a bit of a prankster himself. Fui, he was a little bit more switched on than he led. He used to, when he wanted to get out of an interview or every now and again, he would, make out like his English wasn't too great or he was shy. But around the boys, he was a prankster himself. He was obviously, a bit of a leader with regards to the Islander boys and, the Tongans and the Samoans. Everyone sort of looked up to Fui, not only because of his, footy ability, but he had a presence about him too, Fui. Like, he was well respected on and off the field. So, again, just another guy. We had a really good crew there, mate. Like, the older boys were awesome. They really made you feel comfortable. Everyone had a bit of a laugh, because those were tough times. So, it could have easily got to the point, after 2009 when, there was a lot of expectations. No one sort of turned on each other. We sort of stuck tight, and we had a good, solid playing group. So that's definitely what I remember from those days for sure.
Did he steal your thongs at all, Fui? Wasn't he a thong
stealer? Everything. He stole everything. He would steal your protein. He would steal bananas, Gatorade. Like his bag would be packed with. So we used to get the Gatorade containers, and they'd be full after training, so you could have a Gatorade as you leave. It's supposed to just be, one or two on the way home, and then Fui's bag would be chocker full with about 8 of them. So,
legend.
You had to save a buck for sure.
Still playing too, I think, over in England.
He is.
Still going.
I seen him a couple of years ago when I was over in the UK, so caught up with him over there, and I don't know how old he is. I don't care what his birth certificate says. He's pushing close to 50, I reckon.
Yeah, champion. Now, was it because of the injuries or the Stephen Kearney, the move to the Sea Eagles?
No, the move was due to Sticky. So Sticky come on board in 2013.
Yeah.
He ended up having quite a big clear out the following year. But when it comes to regards with the roster, when he came in straight away, he let my management know straight away that I was going to focus plans moving forward. So I still had 1 year remaining on my contract. Now look, at the time I was obviously devastated, but when I'm looking at it now, it ended up being a bit of a blessing in disguise. in the sense that, you know, what happened to some of those guys a little bit later on. I don't know if you remember when.
Is it the overhead projector?
You know, yeah. So a few of them all got punted in the same video session. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the first one to go, mate. So
Okay.
yeah, in a way, I was, you know, sort of lucky. I was
Yeah.
sort of saved the embarrassment, but yeah, it worked out pretty well for me. I went to Manly and we made the grand final the next year. So sort of rejuvenated my career, bit of a kick in the arse, which I needed at the time, which was good. So it got me back to my best footy for sure.
Were you nervous signing with Manly? What did your dad think about signing with Manly, being Parramatta's rival?
I hated it. So the two teams, and this is where I got like a little bit of confidence back. The two teams that I was speaking to were Manly and Melbourne at the time, and they'd both just come off winning a couple of comps themselves, and they had really strong outfits. You know, obviously those two clubs at that time were looking for players like myself coming, you know, with, you know, 40 to 50 games experience, but not wanted at the club, therefore coming at a discounted price. Like I, you know, received a small payout from Parramatta to just quickly move on and that sort of vibe. So, you know, they wouldn't have to pay much to get me, but it was still pretty cool to have those two teams knocking. And then,
for sure,
mate, I hated Manly. Like, before I got there, I hated, you know, Steve Matai and Anthony Watmo, the Stewart brothers, and then it's like anything. Like once you're a part of it, those boys really embraced me. They were similar to Hindy and Kalo, like really made me feel comfortable. And then that's the same sort of vibe. They just made sure they just wanted to make sure that I bought into what they have been, you know, they had built in the last 5 to 6 years with a couple of comps, and no egos, leave your ego at the door, just fucking concentrate on footy and then you'll be all right.
What was it that Manly got you over the line at Manly instead of Melbourne? Oh, Brad.
Brad
okay.
Arthur. Yeah. So actually, Melbourne ended up falling through first of all.
Oh, okay. Yep.
I went to Bali, where most footy players go in the off season around those times, and I ran into Brad Arthur while I was over there. So Brad had just, I think, you know, Parra were going through a process. I think he was unsure of, you know, what was happening with Ricky. So he secured a deal at Manly himself. I told him I was close to, you know, going to Melbourne, and then Manly come up. So he goes, same sort of thing. He goes, mate, I just got to the joint, but I'll put your name forward, because Tony Williams had just left. Glenn Stewart had done his knee at the back end of the season, so he was going to miss a fair chunk of footy to start the year in pre-season. Yep. So he goes, I might be able to just get you to like a small contract or a train and trial sort of system, and then it's up to you to do the rest. And lucky enough, I had a good pre-season and started to strike up a few combinations, and then that's why I always lean back on Brad during those years, because he was massive for me.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, it was a pretty fair back row in 2013 with yourself and Glenn Stewart and Anthony Watmo.
Yeah, those guys. It was easy to play back row with those guys. It was like Hindy and Anthony Watmo were pretty similar. Probably Anthony Watmo was a little bit early in his career when I got there, and he had a bit more leg speed, a bit like Hindy in the early days.
At the start, yeah.
Yeah, when Hindy used to play on the edge, and he was like a Hindy 2.0 Chocky in a way, where he was like the new coming of Hindy is that workhorse. And then Glenn Stewart, we sort of, I didn't realise how good he was until I got there, going up against him every week at training. I didn't really, I always knew he was a good player, but just seeing every day how he perfects his craft and how skillful he was, it definitely made me a better player. I was lucky enough to play a couple of years with him, and then we ended up going over the season playing at Catalans together, like you alluded to before as well.
Yeah. What was it like playing against Parra for the first time? Was there like friendly rivalry, any like face rubs or anything?
Yeah. So I was still obviously really close with all the boys. There was a bit of chirping after the fact. I just wanted to make sure I got that win first, and we were pretty successful the first couple of years. We mentioned him before, but Fui definitely made me a target and wanted to make sure that he was going to be coming at me the whole game. I got him good on one occasion, but then he got the best of me, as he does most people times after that. But I obviously wanted to stick it to him at the time. I felt like I was unwanted there at the club. At the time, I was the only one as well. So I felt like I had a point to prove, and it was good to get a couple of wins that year. And we had a really successful year on the, not only against Parramatta, but against a lot of teams. So it was just good to be playing good footy. Scored a little try at Parramatta Stadium, which I really enjoyed too. So
yeah,
all around, mate, it was a good year for me.
Is the 2013 grand final your highlight of your career?
Yeah, just for with regards to my professional career, but I got the opportunity to represent my people for New Zealand Maori in 2010 as well.
Yep.
It's not like it is now with the Indigenous game, which is awesome. I would love to have been a part of that, but
yep.
It was just like an exhibition game against England, but a full lineup of England. They were just about to play the Tri Nations, so they wanted to have a good hit out before the Tri Nations started.
Yep.
And that had Sam Burgess, Adrian Morley, Gareth Ellis at the time. The team was stacked. So
it
was my first year of footy, 2010, just after the 2010 season. So
okay.
Yeah, it felt like I was taking the right steps, and it's awesome to represent my people. But yeah, grand final was unreal. Would have been nice if we'd got the win.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm sure you could understand being a Parra fan and being a Nathan Highmarsh fan and whatnot. We're pretty close, but didn't get the chocolates.
Yeah. Now you had Jeff Toovey as a full-time coach. We've seen him in the commentary box, in the coach's box on screen, pretty angry and what do you call it?
Animated.
Yeah, that's the word. Animated. What about in the sheds? Is there a fair spray on him?
Yeah, he does. Toos does for sure.
Yeah, I could imagine
Toos,
so.
he can. I think he did, but to be fair as well, I think he did a lot more in the box than he actually did when it got down into the sheds. But every now and again, he had a spray in him. I didn't play during the Desi Hasler years, but I heard he had an even better one in him as well. Toos could give it the best of him, but he was well respected within the playing group.
Yeah.
He was a legend of the club, so it didn't take much. Toos, he didn't really need to spray us, but when he did, we sort of knew that he meant it, which was we knew we were fucking up at that point. So cranky little man as well. It must be the small man, mate. It's the small man syndrome.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, certainly funny up there in the coach's box. Now, after your NRL career, you head over to France and play for Catalans and also in England for Wakefield Trinity. What was it like to play footy overseas? Yeah,
I loved it. It was perfect timing. There was an opportunity to stay in the NRL with a couple of clubs, but I just thought the time was right. I wanted to travel. I think I was getting a little bit, distracted. I always like to try new things as well. As coming doing the podcast and all those sort of things. I'm sure we'll get to, but I'm always looking for different challenges, and I've always, I grew up wanting to travel. So when I went over there, I got the opportunity to do both. I got to play footy in a competition that I'd always watched, the Superleague. I always enjoyed watching the Superleague. I sort of grew up watching both leagues. So I got the opportunity to go play Superleague and do some travel at the same time. With the Catalans, living in France, learning a new language as best I could. Probably, forgotten most of it now, but buying into the culture, getting to know the people was unreal. And then, when I played for Wakey, it was more so the relationships and the people that I met over there. I've got a fair few teammates that I played with at Wakey that I felt like we were, similar people. We both saw, a lot of the people that end up at Wakey, they're, locker room guys, journeymen, not on, massive contracts.
Yep. Hard toilers.
Yeah, but we all ripped in for each other. We weren't the most talented players, but we all had a crack for each other. So both experiences were unreal. I was away from the family for 4 years and away from friends and family, but definitely felt like I grew up a lot over there. Got to find out a lot about myself, and learned plenty of life lessons for sure.
How much difference of a playing level is the English Super League compared to the NRL? Is there?
Yeah, it's just a difference. Mainly, there's a big drop off, in particular from the top 4 teams. I'd say. I think a lot of the top teams, like a lot of the time they'll sign, star players, Catalans like we're doing now. Like at the time I was at Catalans, we had Toddy Carney and Glenn Stewart, Willie Mason. So they signed some pretty big names. Mitchy Pearce of late, Jimmy Maloney a couple of years ago. So the top 4 teams are pretty competitive, but there's a bit of a drop off with regards to the strength of the squads of all the teams outside of the top 4.
Yeah.
It's only a 12-team competition. I think it's gone to 13 now. But when I was playing, you could definitely tell the difference between playing a top 4 team. Whenever I played St Helens, Leeds really strong, Wigan boys really strong when I was there. I felt like there was an NRL level. Like I felt that the intensity of it, the physicality. But then when you sort of played the lower ranked teams, there were a lot of, you could definitely find your spots a little easier. You could find weaknesses, expose weaknesses a little bit easier. So, that was the biggest difference for me. When you're playing the NRL, it doesn't matter if you play the Bulldogs finished last year or Penrith on the comp. There's always going to be a tough game in the NRL. Sometimes the scores don't even do it justice. Even if you're beating a team by 30, you feel it when you come off the field for sure.
So no doubts then that if there's any NRL players out there listening, that you would recommend them to go to England and play if given the opportunity.
But yeah, for sure, mate. I've with my platform now, I've had conversations with players, whether it be before or after podcasts, or if any, I've had friends of mutual friends that have reached out that have been going to clubs, and it's totally up to the individual really. But I always say I loved it. Like I'll tell them exactly what went down. I'll tell them the pros and cons. I'll be pretty honest with because there's some stuff that's pretty tough when you get over there too. Like missing family is obviously massive.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's not like obviously playing for the Warriors where you can have a 3-hour flight. You've got to properly prepare to get home. So like that come into it. But with regards to the life experiences that I got over there, was second to none. Like some of the places I got to see, some of the cultures I got to witness was unreal. So there's definitely more pros anyway than cons for me through my time there.
Yeah, for sure. Now, when you decided to retire from rugby league, or did you think it was time to give it up? And if it was, did you have some sort of plan in place for life after football?
Yeah. So I had a bit of a plan. Didn't end up going that way. I didn't see myself in the content industry doing podcasts, that's for sure. With regards to finishing up, it was on my own terms. I was thinking about retiring in 2018. I ended up retiring in 2019. I thought I had 1 year left on my contract at Wakey, and I said, I got it in my head. I'll just do this pre-season, and then, if I don't feel it at the start of the year, I'll let everyone know. And, that's what it come down to. I remember playing, like I said, when we played against teams like Wigan and some of the better teams, I really enjoyed it. But at the end of it, when we were playing teams that were lower down, the Hull KRs at the time and London Broncos, I wasn't feeling it. So, I sort of just knew my time was up. One, I didn't want to get injured. One, I didn't want to injure any of my teammates. I made the decision to pull up. And then, with regards to what I'm doing now, it definitely wasn't a plan. I just come back and did a podcast with Isaac, who's the founder of YKTR, the hat you're wearing there. And he was good, mate. He was a mate of mine. So we'd met early on. I mentioned at the top, you probably spoke to my dad when he was a house parent at Parramatta during his years. So we had, Benny Smith come through, Jared Hayne, Daniel Mortimer, Anthony Mitchell, all these guys. One of the guys that come through was living at another house at the time was Isaac John. He came over a little bit earlier on, and I got to meet him then, and then through mutual contacts, we got on a podcast with him, and then the rest is history. He said he asked me if I wanted to do my own podcast through the platform, and we sort of just went from there.
Yeah, well, as you said, you're with the YKTR boys now, and tell you what, it looks like a lot of fun. Well, you there?
Yeah, mate?
Yep. Okay, sorry. Okay. Yeah, you're with the YKTR boys now, and geez, it looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is, mate. It's yeah, there's a few rat bags in there. As you know, former Parramatta player himself, Corey Norman. We have a bit of fun. Sometimes we have too much fun. It's finding that balance between moving on in this next chapter of our lives and making sure that we're leaving a positive imprint on not only the brand but also the game that we all love. We all still love the game. We enjoy doing content on it, and we enjoy. The best thing about us, I guess, if you haven't listened to us, is that we don't take ourselves too seriously. A lot of us, all of us have played footy, but we consider ourselves locker room guys, and I think that's why people enjoy our content when they come on, is that we've got a pretty laid back demeanour with us with regards to interviewing players or going out and meeting people. We love having a good time. We want to invite other people with us. We want to have fun with them, and that's the sort of culture that we're trying to build at YKTR.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I enjoy about listening and watching, is that you guys have been there, done that. You understand the players that are coming on, because, as I said, you've been there, done that. It's a raw sort of media rather than your mainstream media. It's not for everyone, but for rugby league fans, it's very enjoyable to listen to. Who's been your favourite interview that you've done so far?
Ooh, but you know what? Like, I don't mean to sort of play it down, but just getting all the boys that come on for us, because we're unlike anyone else. As you know, when you do this podcast game, the television networks, they pay players to come on and do it. When the boys come on, they do it out of their own, they take their own time out of the day. They organise it with you. They don't have to come into the office. So I appreciate all of them that come in and do it for us, really, because, off the back of it, we're able to create sponsorship for ourselves. It's become a job for myself. So, I've been able to sell merchandise and everything and all those sorts of things. But, so I'm just grateful for all the boys that have come on. And, there's some good stories along the way. We've had some larrikins come on, and, it's kind of hard to pinpoint just, one of my guests.
Yeah, I mean, people ask me sometimes who's been your favourite guest as well, and it's so hard to pinpoint one, two, or whatever. I generally say the same thing. It's all of them, because you get to hear their stories, and I didn't picture myself ever talking to like yourself or Hindy or Sterlo or Ray Price, people like that. I never dreamed of like talking to them and asking them the questions that I want to ask them and things like that. So
sometimes it's even cooler to just chat to, the big names are awesome, but sometimes you can there's some really cool stories. One example is, if people want to jump on and watch one of my podcasts, is I did a cool one with Bud Sullivan and Tyrell Sloan, the two young Dragons players.
Yeah.
Got a really cool story. Those two guys sort of grew up in a rough environment, and they've made the best out of a really bad situation. Like, sort of I don't mean to say that in a bad way, but they said that in their own words. They grew up around alcohol and drugs and all these sorts of things, and they haven't got into any of that stuff themselves. They want to be, really good role models for their people, for the Indigenous people, and there are conversations, cool ones like that you get, not necessarily the biggest names. I think they will be big names in a couple of years for sure, those two players. Tyrell Sloan's already started the year on fire for the Dragons. But, it's not necessarily about the big names or, all those sorts of things. Sometimes it's cool just hearing a story, someone tell a story in their, your own unique situation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly right. I've asked a couple of people to come on, and they say, "Oh, I don't really want to come on. I've only played like 20 games or something." I said, "Yeah, but it's 20 more than me." So, everyone's got a story. So,
yeah, for sure, mate.
You mentioned Corey Norman there before. You lived with Corey. What was that like?
Yeah, that was as you would expect, mate. Too much trouble. We were both very single at the time. But I've got to thank Normie really, because when I come back from overseas, I moved in with a mate, and the plan was to live with him for about 6 months to 12 months, him and his partner, but she fell pregnant. So I was I come back after a couple of weeks and I was stuck. I didn't really have a plan B. Obviously, we just found my own place, but
Yeah.
Normie said, you're doing some stuff with us at YKTR, come move in with us. When you retire, the pay packets stopped coming in. So he looked after me there for a couple of months until I found my feet at YKTR. So it was unreal. We had some good times. We're pretty similar in a way. Like we've got pretty similar interests. Not only with the brand, but we both love to train as well. So when I first moved in, this is when COVID started as well, right? So they weren't players in the NRL weren't allowed to mingle with anyone outside of. They had different rules to the rest of society. Remember, so you could only stay with. They could only interact with their family or housemates. So, poor Normie was stuck with me. I got to go with my life. I was still working and doing some bits and pieces. I become the Uber Eats for him for a little bit. I'd go and get our bacon egg rolls in the morning and bring it back to the room. But we were allowed to get outside and train. We did that a fair bit because he had to stay fit. And then we enjoyed our time off on the weekends.
Do you think we'll see Corey back playing again?
No, I don't think.
No?
I think it's done. Yeah, I think because we just went away for the weekend. He's up in Goldie at the moment.
Yep.
But he come back down and we did the Huskisson Triathlon together.
Okay. Yeah.
I've been doing that with my mates for a couple of years, and he always said when he retired he was going to come do it with me. So we sat down and we watched the footy. The Charity Shield game was on, and it's always a good indication when they watch their first game.
Okay. Yeah.
Being myself, like I asked him, I said, "You're missing it now at the moment," and no, he was really content with where he was at. He got offered from, the reports that no one wanted him. That's why he retired. I can tell you for sure there are a couple of teams that reached out, but he's pretty happy with where he's at. I know for sure at the moment, but I always like to give players, that 6 month wiggle room. I don't follow the NFL, but it only took Tom Brady 2 months to realise that he wanted to come back out. So, never say never, but I think Normie's quite content.
Oh yeah, definitely. Just looking at his socials, he's in a happy place at the moment. So we wish him all the best. I've got some common league questions brought to you by the Stubby Club, proud sponsors of the Parra podcast. Take out your debut game and probably those ones that we talked about. Was there a favourite game that you played in? One that you thought, oh, geez, I really just love that game for whatever reason? Could be just a normal club game.
Yeah, at either club, or was that just Parra? Or?
Yeah, no, either club, junior career. Could even be one in England if you be.
Yeah, no, a game that stands out for sure was when we played I'm not too sure if it was my first year or second year. I think it might have been my first year. We played Melbourne down at Melbourne, and we had a draw against them. The game ended in a draw. Went to extra time and went to the draw. But when I was at the time, I remember thinking we were camped on their line. Cooper Cronk and Cam Smith just surgically kept us down, and we repeat set after repeat set.
Yeah.
I think there was a crazy stat that come out that 5 different players made over 40 tackles.
Wow.
I was one of them, which is obviously, that's how much work we got through as a team. That we were just defending our line the entire game, and we talked about not liking Manly when I was at Parramatta. I can say for sure that the hate between Manly and Melbourne was just as high.
Right up there.
Even more at the time. Those teams, that was maybe 2 years removed or a year removed from the Battle of Brookie. So, that was quite an intense game. And to end in a draw, sometimes there are draws when you come off and you feel like, a bit let down because, you want a result. I think draw was the perfect result for that game because both teams gave it their all.
Yeah. Other than your home ground, did you have a favourite ground that you used to love playing at?
Mate, Parramatta Stadium was unreal.
Yeah.
Suncorp's the pinnacle, I think, for a lot of players. I think a lot of players enjoy playing. It's something about Suncorp. It just feels more open. I don't know if there's something to do with the stadium. It feels like the field's bigger. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what the measurements are like, or if anyone measures it properly up there. But it feels like you just got so much more room to
Okay.
move up at Suncorp. And the best thing is like with the Broncos and unfairly sometimes getting all the Channel 9 games. Generally,
Friday night.
Generally they've got about 30 or 40,000 there. So it's always a great atmosphere. We actually had some really good results. One of a game that I remember, we actually played against Normie in 2010 for the Eels, and we knocked off the Broncos with Darren Lockyer and a young Corey Norman. So that was a pretty a game that stands out for me.
Did you have a least favourite ground, one you hated playing at? Did you? Hang on.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of Leichhardt.
Okay. Yep. Whoop.
Are you there?
Yep. Which ground did you hate?
Yeah, so least. I wasn't a big fan of. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of Leichhardt Oval,
Okay.
mate. I don't know if I sort of did enjoy playing. I played a fair bit of reserve grade there at Leichhardt. And I always felt never really felt like we always got good results. So I feel like we always got dusted by the Tigers, who we were actually better than, but for some reason they used to get it over us. We had a really good reserve grade team when I was coming through, and we had successful years, but we just couldn't get the Tigers for some reason. And then that sort of flowed into my NRL career. Always struggled against the Tigers at Leichhardt. It was a bit of a pain in the ass for family and parking and everything as well. It's one of those fields that's a bit rough, but I still love suburban grounds. I love the history that comes with it. I just didn't have the greatest success there.
Now, you mentioned Steve Maddai before, and he's was one of the hardest hitters in the game. But who did you find as the hardest hitter in the game when you played?
Well, I know for sure through experience, Josh Papali'i got me in his early years.
Yeah.
And he didn't miss. So me and Fui had a nice little combination. I used to enjoy running holes off Fui because he always sucked in 2 or 3 defenders. So when I come on to hit the scene, Fui sort of drift across field like he did. I don't know if you remember it. And I used to sort of just try to run a hole off him. If I didn't, end up making a line break, it was normally a half tackle because he committed so many players.
Yeah.
I can say for sure that he did not commit Josh Papali'i. He got me right in the rib cage. If I had my time back, I wish I could have thrown the hospital ball for Fui rather than the other way around because, he was definitely a big one. Sam Burgess was even running the ball. Sam was a big hitter. I tried to shoot out of the line and get him, try to blindside him one game and come off second best in that as well. So those are a couple of guys that stand out.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I threw out the questions to some of the listeners, and I got a response back from a B. Smith of Parramatta. Oh, actually, I think it's Central Coast, actually. Probably a former teammate, Benny Smith. And he said to say, how did you get the nickname Mad Dog?
That's been passed on, mate. That's
okay.
So, yeah, that's a family nickname. That one. It's a bit of a giggle, bit of a G up. My uncle first got called. No, sorry, my dad first got called Mad Dog on the Kiwis tour, and didn't really enjoy it. So there's a few. You'll have to ask him about that next time if he ever comes back on. But basically, they had to sort that out at the pub. I think my uncle got involved. It was within teammates. It's one of those good old school stories that you wouldn't get anymore. But the nickname sort of got passed on, but it was more of a bit of a giggle.
Yeah, fair enough.
I appreciate if that come from Benny Smith. I appreciate it.
Well, we actually threw out a couple of other questions as well. He wanted to know, what's your favourite Garth Brooks song?
I miss Benny, mate. Next time, if you speak to him again, I've got to give him a message. Actually, it's been too long. Me and Benny Smith was one of my closest mates. He came through the house with my parents. He played back row. I looked up to him. He was on the other edge. I had guys like that I'd sort of grown up with Folletti Mateo and Ben Smith, and those two guys were. He was always good. He was always a good laugh, as you can see.
Yeah.
You'd have to ask Benny about Garth Brooks, mate, because he's more of a fan of.
Yeah.
You can tell Benny. I'm more of a Desperados fan myself. Eagles fan, sorry, and I don't mind the song Desperado.
Okay.
That'll probably be up there for me.
Well, he's got one last one, and he said, "Who carried on the most? Was it yourself, Hainsey, or Hindy? Who carried on the most?"
Yeah, mate, have to be Hainsey. Hainsey did whatever he wanted whenever he wanted. At trainings, he was obviously how talented he was. It's crazy, how what he could produce on the footy field without producing it at training. It was unbelievable. Some of the stuff that we had to do to get ourselves in good shape to play footy, Hainsey just naturally had it. He was just born to play rugby league, mate. And you can tell, obviously, that 09 run stands out for sure.
Oh, definitely.
One of the greatest runs in rugby league history. So, he definitely carries on the most, mate.
Do you think that 09 run is better than the Tommy Turbos from last year?
Well, see, me and Folletti Mateo actually spoke about this.
Okay.
This wasn't even on a podcast. And Folletti brought up a good point. He goes, with regards, he looked at it in the sense what Hainsey did with the rules and the physicality, it was a different game when Hainsey was doing it.
Yeah.
You look at the 6 again rule that's come in the past couple of years, the speed of the game is you can't wrestle it all anymore. Basically, they've taken it all out. The game goes so quick. Can you imagine giving Hainsey some of that momentum that Tommy Turbo got this year, which is not, and this is not talking down Tommy because I was lucky enough to play with both of them. I've seen Tommy coming through firsthand in my last couple of years at Manly. You could tell he was going to be special. But if you're looking at it stats-wise, probably Tommy had the better year, but I would have liked to have seen what Prime Hainsey could have done within the new system with the new rules, with the new 6 again rule and the momentum swings. As you watch the last couple of years, some of the momentum swings are crazy. Teams by 40 points. That stuff just never really happened in our time, especially 2009, 2010.
No.
If you got beaten by 20, you got smacked. That was a big scoreline. Now, you look at games and consistently 40 plus and 50 plus. Yeah, so I think that's the biggest difference, but that was a pretty good run in 09 for Hainsey for sure.
Oh, definitely. Who did you find in your teams or the opposition was the biggest pest or sledger on the field?
Who was a pest? Jimmy Maloney was up there.
Yeah.
So I played at we played reserve grade for 2 or 3 years at Parramatta. We played on the same edge, and he used to do a fair bit of chirping, which I enjoyed when I was on his team. When I played against him, especially in the grand final when he was talking a bit of rubbish and carrying on a treat. Obviously, got the job done against us as well. He was up there. He could talk with the best of them. And another ex-teammate of mine from Catalan Dragons, Birdie, he didn't mind a bit of a stoush. Greg Bird.
Yeah.
He used to sort of get frustrated with me as well because, I'd give it back as good as I got. And,
fair enough.
And I probably wasn't at his level, though, in terms of stature in the game. So he probably didn't enjoy when I was carrying on. But, when we played together, we loved teaming up and picking on plays in the Superleague, that's for sure.
Fair enough. Did you have a post game feed of choice after a game?
Not post game. I had pre game. So
Okay.
yeah, me and Benny Smith actually we used to go to No Names, the Italian restaurant, the franchise. It's a bit of an old school Italian theme. It's a bit of a cheap feed actually. It was the $20 chicken schnitzel and pasta combo. So after most captain's runs, especially if we were at home, we used to go get a snitty and a pasta, and then just fill up the guts sort of the day before. Then I would have a bit of a lighter dinner because I'd always have a big lunch. Didn't want to go to bed on a full stomach, and then sort of had a lighter game day prep as well. So it was pretty much my last big meal to
up
and get ready for a game. That was my mindset anyway. I don't know in this day and age if players smash and that, but that's the way that we did it.
Oh, well, schnitzel and pasta sounds pretty good to me. Now, to wrap things up, we've got the personality questions brought to you by Frankie and Co. Now, you're a massive American sports fan, so I'm tipping that maybe NFL is your favourite sport outside of rugby league?
Yep, NFL and NBA, but for sure NFL's just got the slight edge on NBA.
Who's your favourite NFL team?
Green Bay Packers.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a pretty cool story actually. In 2010, Benny Roberts played for us in 2010 or 11, and his cousin at the time was dating a Green Bay Packers player, and they come to watch us play.
Oh, okay.
2010, yeah, Benny Roberts, 2010 it was. So then once I met him, my love, because I was really getting into my NFL at the time, I said, all right, I'm a Packers fan from now on. So that all happened at Parramatta Stadium.
Yeah, wow. Okay, That's interesting. What's your specialty? We've just spoken about food. What's your specialty dish in the kitchen or on the barbecue?
My missus will say I don't have one and I haven't been doing it enough. I like, pretty stock standard. I like, now I've got myself a new Weber, I've got to start cooking on there again. Pretty stock standard for me. Yep. She does all the creative stuff, and I'll whip up the burgers or a burrito. Just chuck a steak on and veggies. Yeah, very simple from my end, and lucky I've got her because she's the creative one when it comes to the kitchen.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I'm not much of a cook myself. Bacon and eggs, probably sausages and steak. Probably that's
I love a good brekkie for sure.
Yeah. Now, sort of change this question a little bit, but who is the most famous person you'd love to meet and get them on your podcast and have a chat with?
Famous.
Who would you really love to meet and do a podcast chat with?
I don't know. I'll sort of keep it to footy. Joey Johns would be a big one. Yeah. Joey was my assistant coach at Manly.
Okay.
We get on pretty well. He was there for a couple of years. I know everyone knows Joey's got a good story in him. Joey's got some really good stories. So I've hit him up a couple of times. I've seen him in person. We've had a bit of a joke around about it. He's very hard to get, obviously, because he does so much, work with Channel 9, and he doesn't really do podcasts as well. No. So it would be a big one. Another sporting guy that we've got to put up a bit of a relationship is Dan Carter over in New Zealand.
Oh, yeah.
He's talked about coming on at one point and doing a podcast with me, so I'd love to get him on one day. That was a cool moment where sort of my content got me noticed by him. He probably wouldn't have known who I was through my footy career, but doing podcasts and content and all that sort of got me on his radar. And then, we go back and forth every now and again. So probably I consider those two guys the goats of their positions. Might be a bit debatable for you being a Parra fan. You probably have Stello there, Stello with Joey. Which I won't knock for. But I hold those two guys in high regard for sure. Andrew Johns and Dan Carter.
Well, if you get Joey on, let him know I'm interested as well. And I actually had Darryl Halligan on last week. So
that's fun.
He did some goal kicking coaching with Dan Carter back in the day as well.
Yeah, Darryl Halligan did coaching for us at Parramatta during my time there as well.
Yeah.
I think I was fourth string kicker, so I never got the opportunity to kick. But unbelievable. Just the techniques and all that he provides is second to none.
Yeah, for sure. Now, if you were stuck on a deserted island, two-part question: what 3 luxury items would you want to take with you, and which 3 former teammates wouldn't you want with you?
Right.
So, what would you want to take?
Mobile phone's a bit obvious one, isn't it? You try to call to get yourself off there. I don't know what the reception's like going to be on the deserted island. Probably want fishing line would probably come in handy to do get some food. And then I don't know, maybe a knife if I need to protect myself, or find some other forms of food. People who I would want on there, Fui, because he would steal all 3 off me. Who else? I'm just trying to think of some of the other guys that I played with.
Any of the YKTR blokes? Would you want them deserted on an island with you?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. I think probably wouldn't be good having Isaac on there because mate, he's a lunatic. Like he needs to be doing something at all times. He needs to be up with his content, or he needs to be figuring out the business. He'd go crazy, and I think it would send me crazy for sure. And then I'll go one from Manly. I'd probably go Daly Cherry Evans from Manly because, mate, he's just that tight. If he found anything on the island, he wouldn't be sharing it with you. So let's throw him in there.
That's fair enough.
Anything he found, he'd keep to himself.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Now, if you weren't a rugby league player, what profession or job is a profession, do you think you would have done as a career?
I'm not too sure, mate. Like Dad's in sales himself. I've always been confident enough to have conversations with people. Even going back to the retail background at Peter Wynn's, I didn't mind engaging with customers and all that sort of thing. So maybe that's something that probably would have come natural to me. I remember at one point as a kid, I wanted to be a real estate agent. I don't know, where that come from. I think it's because I thought that they made a whole heap of money when they sold houses. So I know some of them do. I know a lot probably are just chipping away as well. But maybe something in sales, a bit like my old boy, seems to run in the family, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Well, we've got to get a great real estate sponsor on the podcast, Shannon Cooney for the Merrick Property Group. So he's great. You already answered the last question. Who your favourite band or solo artist is to listen to?
Oh yeah, that bit of tongue in cheek, the Eagles.
Yeah,
but that was Benny's. That was his wind-up song. Next time if you speak to Benny Smith, you'll let him know. He used to like to get in the zone before the games, and we sat close to each other in the locker, being 11 and number 12 and number 13.
Yeah,
and he would just have the earphones in. I could just hear. It was either the Boss or the Eagles, just desperado, just getting himself into the games. But
what about yourself there? Who's your favourite band or solo artist?
Mate, I enjoy. I'm probably more of an R&B guy myself. I've always liked the slow jam sort of vibe. I don't mind the Weekend at the moment. I love myself a bit of Justin Bieber as well. Biebs has grown on me as he's got a bit older. I'm I'll sort of flow anyway, depending on the room, really, mate. If someone chucks on a good tune, but I love some of the old school stuff as well. I sort of grew up. My dad used to play a lot of Motown when I was growing up, the Temptations and all those sorts of things. So as a kid, I grew up, listening to those the R&B, slow jams, Motown sort of music.
Great. Well, Justin Horo, aka The Scope, thank you very much for your time and your chat today. I really enjoyed it and appreciate your time. I'm sure the fans will love it too, and listeners. After you listen to this one, jump onto YKTR and listen to The Scope, and and his podcast, some great chats there. It's been great to chat to a player I watched play his whole career and at the club that I love in Parramatta. So I hope to catch up one day and say hi. So thank you very much for coming on the Parra podcast today.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Troy.